Hello, seventh graders. How are you? We are up to chapter 14. We're talking today about industry in the North, chapter 14, section 1, from 1820 to 1860. We're going to specifically talk about industry and the growth of industry in the North. We've talked a lot this year about the agricultural system and the plantation system in the South. Well, today we're going to talk about the industrial growth in the North and what life in industries were like in the northern states. A couple of important items before we begin. I have put your vocab deck for 14.1 on Quizlet, and I've also linked it on the Schoology page for this particular lesson. Make sure you watch this video lecture first, and then at the end you can watch any corresponding videos that I've placed along with your Quizlet deck. You're going to see 3 vocab words here at the top of the page that we're doing right now. There is a 4th that will be added to the Quizlet deck, and that 4th is going to have a local connection. The 4th word is going to be, the 4th term that you'll need to know is Walter A. Wood Jr. And during the course of this lesson, and after you've watched a couple of the videos that I've linked on Schoology, you'll have a feel, if you don't already. I know we've talked about him a lot in class already this year, but if you don't have a feel for who he was or who he is, you will at the end of this lesson. So let's get to it. Industry in the North, chapter 14, section 1. Vocab, we're talking about, these are all important parts of industry in the North. The first vocab word is telegraph, which was a communication device that works by sending electrical signals along a wire. Second word is locomotive, which is a steam-powered train engine. And the third word that we'll need to know related to industry in the North is a narrow, speedy sailing vessel, clipper ship, a narrow, speedy sailing vessel designed to make best use of the wind. Again, there's a 4th word, Walter A. Wood, 4th term, Walter A. Wood Jr., and those 4 words you will find on your Quizlet deck that I've linked on Schoology for you and also linked on Quizlet. So pressing on, let's take a look at our reading here. In the middle 1800s, a number of inventions helped manufacturing and farming grow in the North. We talked about the factory system earlier. Let's take a look at some of the manufacturing and farming inventions. The sewing machine allowed a worker to make dozens of shirts in the same amount of time that it took to sew one shirt by hand. A lot of you might have sewing machines in your home now. A lot of people use sewing machines to repair clothing, and some people still, out of their households, use sewing machines to manufacture or to make their own clothing. Farmers could now use lightweight steel plow pulled by a horse. Older iron or wooden plows were heavy and had to be pulled by slow-moving oxen. And the lighter steel plow could now be pulled by a horse in the middle 1800s. A mechanical reaper could harvest as much as 5 people using hand tools. And a mechanical reaper is going to have a local connection. The largest manufacturer in the world of mechanical reapers in the early to mid 1800s is going to be none other than Walter A. Wood, who is a Hoosick Falls native and whose name is located all throughout our town. So make sure that you watch the PowerPoint presentation that I've linked to the Schoology page after this video lecture on information and some sites that are going to be very familiar to you related to the Walter A. Wood Mowing and Reaping Company. He produced, and for a long time, he was the #1 seller of reapers in the world, even more popular than John Deere, believe it or not. New means of communication helped business as well. Samuel F.B. Morse invented the telegraph in the 1840s. The telegraph allowed news to travel rapidly. Businesses in different parts of the country could now exchange information quickly. New transportation methods also helped northern businesses grow. Now, in an earlier lesson, we talked about canals and we talked about flatboats and we talked about improvements to roads. Now, in the 1800s, we're going to be looking at another new transportation method, a steam-powered locomotive, which moved people and freight at amazing speeds. Early trains had many troubles, however, they broke down often and were quite unsafe in the early days. They caused many fires. It took years for railroad builders to build strong, safe tracks. Yet by the 1850s, railroads linked cities from the east to the Midwest. And there's going to be a pretty cool graph here to the right, which we'll talk about in a moment, that talks about the growth of railroad track all throughout the North from 1840 to 1860. The clipper ship was another improvement to industry in the North. Clipper ships moved very fast through the water, and these ships helped American merchants win a large share of the world's sea trade by the 1840s and the 1850s. However, ships powered by steam soon replaced clipper ships. Clipper ships were powered by the wind, and by the 1850s and 60s, we're going to see the advent of ships that were powered by steam, and they would replace these clipper ships. Taking a look at the last paragraph, steam was also used in other ways. By the 1830s, machines and factories began to use steam power. In earlier times, the first factories built used water power and had to be built near fast-moving rivers. Now, however, with the advent of steam power, factories could be built anywhere. They did not have to be built near a fast-moving source of water. You will have two questions at the bottom here. The first question, if you could complete on a separate, actually both questions, if you complete on a separate piece of paper or complete both on a Google Doc. The first question is, what are three inventions that helped change farming and manufacturing in the North? Again, those inventions, we covered each of them in the reading. And the graph skills is going to ask you, by about how many miles of track did the railroads grow between 1840 and 1860? Now, if you look at the chart, on the left-hand side of the chart, you've got thousands of miles of track. And this, for example, this would be 5,000, this would be 10,000, this would be 15,000. And on the bottom axis, the horizontal axis of the diagram or the graph, you've got the years. So as you move from 1840 to 1860, the question is asking you what is happening to the number of miles of track in the United States, specifically the growth of railroads in the North. Question 2 specifically asks, by about how many miles of track did the railroads grow between 1840 and 1860? Take a very close look at the graph, and you should be able to answer that question by looking at the thousands of miles of track that were laid. Nearly all of this track between 1840 and 1860, nearly all of it was built in the northern states. Remember that the southern economy was still an economy that relied largely on slave labor and agriculture. And therefore, we're going to see a great disparity between the number of miles of railroad track in the north and the number of miles of track that are going to spring up in the south. So a couple things before we sign off. Make sure that you watch the videos that I've linked on your Schoology page for this lesson. And also, as I said, make sure that you're watching the PowerPoint that Mr. Bushner helped create a couple of years ago on the Walter A. Wood presence in Hoosick Falls. When you open that link on the Schoology page, make sure that you maximize the link so it fills out the whole page. Otherwise, you're only going to see half of the slides as you go from page to page. So watch your videos, watch the Walter A. Wood slide, and also practice and familiarize yourself with your vocab from 14.1, which is linked on Schoology and is also available on each of your class Quizlet pages. Thanks, guys, and we will see you again next class day.